Hello, it's Lee. This video is going to be about, as the title says, piercing the veil, and I guess it'll speak for itself. Well, all of us are sharing this planet and this galaxy and this universe, and even in just this small planet, in the small locality that you and I are in, whether it be in my own country of Canada, or for United States, United Kingdom, or wherever else. We are all in this multi-dimensional world, basically, and it's good to recognize this because, we've been told, I guess, a few misconceptions or a few tall tales, both from what's called mainstream religion and also mainstream science. And I would say the accurate height of both would end up being the same thing ultimately. So in my own preference, I like to say when religion and science will meet properly at the height of both, harnessing both accurately, then there'll be a connection, which will be the same thing. In other words, for such a thing as mysticism and shamanism, these kind of things, quantum physics and beyond quantum proves it. So both sides of the story are going to end up saying the same thing, but sort of need to test and hone each other a little bit until it gets more accurate. Now I'm the kind of person that always says personal experience is the best thing to do and witness, because listening to someone's story or testimony is one thing, even if it comes from an authoritative source, because we can take a lot of things for granted. Sometimes we like to take the authority of somebody as absolute and final, whereas it couldn't be further from the truth. I think it's unfortunate that when we're very young kids, we get told all sorts of things, and those things are told to us as, ultimate constitutional, accurate truths in the universe, but they may not be that. Anyways, we can talk about that another time. This is mostly going to be about piercing the veil. Whether you're sitting in front of your computer or, like me, maybe you have your computer set up to your TV kind of thing, so my entertainment center, whatever the case, or a laptop outside, no matter where you are watching or listening to this video, be well aware that there are all sorts of varying energies going around, even as you are listening to this now. What is between this screen and yourself, maybe you could count it by a distance of a few feet or quite a few feet. Between this space, between you and the wall, between you and the ceiling, between you and your neighbor, you may see what we like to call three-dimensional objects that seem to be appearing in the physical world. I have my steering wheel here. I have these clothes, this and that necklace. But this is just a visible, tangible thing. So when we actually realize that there's more going on behind the scenes, or between the scenes, then and bridging them, then this gets more interesting. Now here's a question. Can anybody prove that there is energies going on? Well, yes. But can I prove it to you by a physical means? Can I prove to you that there's energies, there are invisible energies and interdimensional energies taking place and going on in a physical way? Of course I cannot do that. People say, oh, well, if God exists, just to use this example, oh, well, prove it. Well, disprove it. If you're asking something to be condensed and into something very palpable, malleable, maybe it doesn't work that way. You could say, in that regard, well, how can the nose taste something, or how can the ears smell something? You're asking something to go into a function that it is not able to exist in, or transfer over to necessarily. In some cases it can. Now, I'm not even going to bother making too many debates in this video about that kind of stuff. If someone needs proof that God exists, or there's dimensional beings, angels and whatnot, well, this isn't the place to be for the exact moment. Because I'm not speaking to those types of people that are needing this sort of affirmation. I'm talking more for people that are already along my wavelength and who already are my friends, and we understand that there are a lot of things going on. I think it's very wise to always realize that there is always so much more that we can learn. Even if some of us feel a little bit old and experienced on this particular planet, with a number of incarnations and with, general historical feelings and whatnot, well, it's one place, it's one school that we've been looking at, but there can be a lot more. And there can be a lot more dimensions that we're not even aware of. Even the ones that I might be able to speak of, there could be a whole lot more than that even, because I'm not aware of all of it. So in this theme, I guess, to put it that way, we will be intelligent if we cautiously go with a very open mind and a very open heart. Even the dog agrees. Yep, there you go. Now, in this planet, we see physical things, but we are aware that we are having thoughts and emotions as the human entity. Even animals are able to have thoughts and emotions, even dreams. Hopes and dreams. Hopes and dreams, and fears also, prove that there has been past and there will be future. You cannot hope ahead unless there is time to get there and a means in which you may arrive at that destination. So, we already are within time and space, and that doesn't have to be proven to anybody probably, which is a good thing. When I say piercing the veil, I'm mostly talking about what is around us that we don't see that is already there. Sometimes we can see these things. Now I'm going to sound very outlandish, maybe to my detriment. Some people might like to poke fun of it, but we often just poke fun when we're afraid and when we don't know something. And that's okay, this is normal. Everybody does it. When we come to test things properly, then we might see that, maybe there is something there, maybe something a bit beyond. So, whether it is spirits, whether we're talking about interdimensional beings, whether we're talking about angels and demons crossing over, whether we're talking about entities that are stuck in one dimension and are not necessarily interdimensional, well, we are all sharing this all-permeating reality. We may have different aspects of reality. You may be able to say, well, I have my reality and you have yours. And I can say to you, I have mine, you have yours. Well, maybe that's true, we have our perspective. But we are sharing this. This reality is being shared by all of us. And there is one reality, the all-permeating reality, that everything may come into contact with each other. With one another, with everything. So, this is like a round circle which connects everything. It is in this all-permeating reality that we're able to start to sense things and cross over into our consciousness. Instead of saying, I guess I can maybe try and put something this way. When I first started getting into mysticism very heavily in my very early 20s, I was 20 years old, 21 years old. 20 years, had just turned 20, and whoosh, massive door opened. And I started to realize that whatever is there is already there, and it is not dependent on my belief of it being there or not. My belief or disbelief, but my belief will assist me on perhaps contacting or having an encounter or an experience with that which is not normally seen in normal consciousness or in a normal reality. So that's why I say there's an openness. But let's put it this way: whatever is there is already there, not dependent on human belief. Let's say that before we discovered that the Earth was around, remember, people of all over the world thought that the Earth was flat, and if you eventually reached an end, you'd fall off into hell. Early voyagers of the sea even didn't want to sail too far lest they fall off the waterfall into the abyss, kind of thing. So that's one example. We also can look at discoveries of things, such as, in the animal and plant kingdoms, that, I made a new discovery. Well, it's a discovery. It's a covering of what was already there. So, and that's just for physical things, but let's talk about things that don't necessarily exist purely in the physical. You and I do not necessarily, and we do not exist only and solely in the physical. I was sharing this in some writing I was doing recently. You and I have memory. We can remember when we were little kids. When I was a very young baby, I realized that I was a baby before. Now I am an adult with this nowness consciousness. But I don't remember when I was a baby in this focal consciousness at all. It may be in the back of my subconscious, it may be in my super consciousness area, but it is not anything. I cannot bring up any specific details of that. So by saying this, and the same for you, we already have existed in a time before our memory existed. So that itself can be something to meditate upon. What I'm saying by going all in this big loop is that what already is what already is the truth. So when we approach these things, openly with love, with kindness, with diplomacy, then we can start to interact with that which is already there, and it may seem invisible to us. I think a big achievement, if you want to call it enlightenment, that word has some positive and some negative connotations by this point, maybe. But you know what I'm talking about when I use that word. And a big part of it, our awakening, is that we come to accept that which is already there, and it is what it is without our judgment or control of it. A lot of people that doubt the existence of God, a lot of people that doubt the existence of gnomes and fairies and these sorts of things. Well, there's a whole other side topic we can get into. Because people do not like to believe in what they cannot control. Fear is based on a loss of control and a sense to be harmed in some way, a sense to be attacked in some way, a sense that you do not have power over something anymore. You become vulnerable. Fear exists in many dimensions and in many styles, but so does hope. So that's a good thing. Now, piercing the veil, if we can say that what already is, and we have a willingness to accept that it is there, and it is what it is, then with that diplomacy I was mentioning, we can start to get into contact with these things. Now, I wouldn't dare say that I am a hardcore big-time shaman, even if my little username. I don't think that in this era it's very easy to become that, because we have such a... when we're born again, we have this very difficult Western mind to overcome, because we've been taught and conditioned in such a way. So when we drift off into these other dimensions, we think it's been labeled as insanity or crazy or it's schizophrenia or it's this and that. These are people with fear who want to control things, or maybe some of them, and a lot of them, are genuinely just trying to go very cautiously because they're not sure. Well, some of us, after we've already pierced the veil, we have a very easy time doing so again. It's like riding a bike. I can say to you very truthfully, and I don't want to brag, and I'm not going to brag about bigger little powers that I might have, and that you might have. Many people have little powers. Some people have bigger powers. I can say that my ability to be aware of spirits can be almost as soon as I'm willing to turn my mind and say, okay, now be aware. And then I'll get into contact. This is very true. This is just a very simple truth. Anyone can do it. It's not about feeling proud or smug about anything we get into, because like I said, what already is there is, and we are all sharing this one all-permeating reality. Therefore, we can all access into this. Cats and dogs naturally and easily are able to sense spirits and beings in other dimensions, because they don't think about it. They don't say, okay, that's that, that's that. They just know. They sense, and sometimes they even see very quickly. We go into things in such a measure of caution because we are created to be, all of us, demigods, and we already do, but we'll all better later on, use the powers of judgment. So we like to see whether or not this is something that scares us or gives us hope and joy, whether or not there's a benefit to be gained, whether there's an alliance to be made, whether there's something to be afraid of, whether there's something to be concerned about, all this kind of stuff. Now, I don't like theories. I don't like people talking about theories and ideas until they have really been able to, like, put it in other words, there's no point speaking authoritatively about anything until we've tested it for ourselves and have a good semblance of what is or is not. So, even for all my awarenesses that I have, and I'm not saying I'm a grandiose anything, but I'm saying for all my awarenesses that I have of different entities and energies and patterns that are going around, I wouldn't say to you, it is that, just take my word for it. I ask anyone to pierce the veil for themselves. The ingredients again are openness, diplomacy, and saying, okay, what is, with a loving heart, I will accept it for what it is. Being guided by this, and not wanting to control reality and trying to make things up. Because if you go into it that way, you're never going to access the higher ways. Now, people talk a lot about Illuminati and dark brotherhoods and spirits. Well, yeah, these are very real, but they're not as strong as they themselves would like to think they are. The simple reason being, and I'm not saying that they're nothing, but I'm saying, because the demonic forces can be very strong, but what I'm saying is, it's based on the fear that they have, and the fact that they work in shadows, and not in light. So they're always up to tricks, and not actual power, actual courage. Now the point I was going to make though is that these types of beings are literally quite quarantined and quite trapped in this kind of dimension, because they do not enter the different dimensions and interdimensionality, to use that word, I'm making up something funny, interdimensionality with, like, a multidimensional awareness with an open diplomatic heart to accept that which is. Whenever we say to ourselves with pride and ego, well, this is what I want it to be, and I create my own reality, to a degree we do. But there are so many things that are completely out of our control. So, well, that's my invitation to anyone who wants to get, into mysticism, into shamanism, into real druidry. Any name you want to put on it, doesn't really matter. Real yoga. I don't mean physical exercises. That's not yoga. I mean real union. Yoga is based on the word huge, to join, to union. A union with that which is. So, if we're willing to cooperate with these things, then we can definitely start to be aware of it and have encounters with it. Now, there is a lot going on on the other side, as opposed to this physical world. There is much more going on the other side than this physical world. This is just one little seemingly concrete place. People call it an illusion. Well, I don't want to call the physical world Maya or illusion. It's not exactly that. It's just temporary. So since it doesn't really last and is always in a state of fluctuation, flux, then in that case people call it an illusion. These houses, this car that I'm sitting in, this body, all will disappear one day, as if it never were. So in that case, we call it that. But for us in the body, it's very real. But that's the thing to remember. All of this is temporary. On the other side, the spiritual worlds, plural, and the multi-dimensions that are everywhere all the time, overlapping all the time. This is much more real. This has a greater state of permanence, and in some cases, actually eternal, forever and ever. Now, you and I are eternal, but not as these humans whatsoever. Not even as humanoid shapes or entities. Not even in astral form entities. Our eternal nature is much deeper than this, and you can't really describe what it looks like. I want to say so much. I always want to say so much in my videos. I'm always afraid that I've lost half the audience that first started watching it by now. Maybe I'll have to keep it short, but, I'll just give an example or two. When I was 20 years old, and for the whole year of 20 to 21, a massive world opened up to me. I saw God talking to me through everything. I had trees rain on me when there was no rain. I've had birds fly up to me and look at me with these way too intelligent eyes. Or when I was thinking about something, a squawk at a perfect precise moment, or a dog barking, or could be many things, even a car honking a horn. Now people can say, oh, coincidence, but when you know, and it's not that. I started to hear taps and ticks all around me at certain moments. I started to feel beings touch me on occasion, not in any crude or insulting way, but just gentle letting me know. I could say a few more things, but I'm not the only one that has this kind of thing. This is very common, actually, when you get into mysticism and shamanism and this kind of thing. These things become very common, actually. This is nothing. You can do it too. So that's the point. To pierce the veil, if you want to do it, if you want to cleanse the doors to perception, it's not that difficult. It just takes a willingness, a courage, maybe not a text message, and yeah, a hope, and with love. Then many things start to open up in a multitudinous way, and it's very wonderful. Kind of makes the troubles and the stress of the temporary physical world very small and minute. Turns down the volume of it. Makes us feel eternal, makes us feel safe. Even when there's stress, maybe we were going to cry and groan and kick it a little bit, but everything will be alright. So that's my... I'm going to speak more about this on a different video, but this is my introduction to piercing the veil. I hope it helped at all, if at all, and I can only wish you the best. Have a nice moment. Feel my energy for you. It's very... I hope to always say it's very authentic. And we'll talk soon. Check my other videos if you like. I'm trying to cover a lot of subjects on there. A bit at a time. I got young kids, I can only do so much at once. It's been a hard winter I just had. Anyways, cheers, namaste. Catch you on the flip side.